Last time we ended up talking about, we finished talking about radio buttons and how to put those in and how to deal with them. So today I want to show you how to do a few more things in HTML forms, and then we'll go through a little exercise and then we'll be done with this unit and give you an assignment and work from there. So next week will be assignment time again. So next I want to talk about how to do combo boxes and list boxes. All right, first of all, notice that these are not input tags. We've already seen a text area tag that is not an input tag. This is a separate kind of tag. It's a select tag. Okay. And my style still applies to it, so I'm going to put that in here. And this is a select. And I believe, yeah, the select, the whole object gets its own ID. So this is, what am I supposed to do here? I forgot. I'm supposed to add my favorite class label with a bunch of class RPG intermediate. Boy, it's time to update my notes again. Okay, so we'll call this, the ID is a favorite class, and the name, it's a combo box. And the name equals a favorite class, and it's a two-sided tag. Inside of here, we have options. So we put an option tag in there, and that basically creates every item inside this combo box or list. If we use the same tag, select, for both, then how do we know which one we're creating? Using a size tag. By default, the size is 1. Right? So you get a combo box. If you make the size, we're talking about the depth now, how many rows. If you make the size anything other than 1, you get a list box. So that's pretty simple. Pretty good plan there. So let's put a few of those classes in here. I'm going to do an option. Oops. And in between there, you just put whatever text you want. This is a two-sided tag. And so we can do iOS development. And what else are you guys taking? Systems design, got to be one of your favorites. Love that class. Good to hear.
I think it's we love the book.
Your instructor loves the book, so that works out pretty well. So let's see what this does. Save that and refresh my form. And so there, oops, forgot the break afterwards, and I forgot a label for it. Though it did tend to shift over. I wonder why that is. I believe I put it up there. Maybe I didn't. It's a unit 6 sample? Or it's unit 6. This one says unit 6 evaluation form is the name of the folder. Okay, so there's my favorite class. We can drop it down, pick a bunch of stuff from there. And when we submit, it sends, oops. That was the required tag, by the way. Oh, dang it. I knew there was a reason I wanted the internet. I do not have internet on here. So my internet service on my virtual machine is not working, but Rena's confirmed that that worked, and whatever text you pick gets sent to the server. And we did confirm that at least it popped up as a combo box. Okay? And whatever text you send gets sent back with these options. Occasionally, however, you want to send back something else. think back to programming logic intermediate, and we picked a store from a combo box, but we didn't send the store name into the database, we sent the ID. Think of all your RDD stuff that we're doing, where you pick a course, but when we're talking about a registration or an enrollment in a course, you don't put the entire course name in the enrollment, you put the linking field, the ID, in there. So this may be some text that I've created from a database. This is another very common technique, by the way, is combo boxes that are filled from a table in the database. Here's the list of customers that you can choose from. Here's the list of products, the list of courses. But when you pick one, it doesn't return the name of the course. Instead, it returns some linking value. So what we can do here is say, I want a value equals 1. You can put anything in this value that you want to. They can be numbers, they can be key fields, they can be abbreviations, WP, iOS. You can do anything with these values that I want, but often they are the corresponding linking field for that course. So the course ID or the course number or whatever we chose to do. And Reen's going to have to test it, but you'll see that when I create it, it really doesn't look any different. Okay. Still looks the same, but now Reen's going to test it. And if you look at my website, you get the number, right? You get the number, the value, whatever that value is what gets sent to the server, not the text itself. So if you don't put in a value clause, you get the text. If you put in a value clause, and you'll see this on many websites where the value is exactly the same as the text, well, that's kind of redundant. Still works, but it's redundant. We can also designate a size. And I only have 4 classes, so let me add one more here just so it scrolls a little bit. What's left? Yeah, we'll just put one in there. Okay. And now it's a list box. And I can scroll, and if it's a big list box, I can do a lot. And the same technique works. You click on it, it sends the text if there's no value, it sends the value if there is one. So they work exactly the same way, but there's one feature that a list box has that a combo box does not allow, and that's a multi-select. Okay. If we want to, we can, this is another option here, I'm sorry, let's talk about that first. If you want one option to be selected already when you start, just designate it as selected. So if I want my system's design to be selected, it goes inside the option tag. And you might see some old code that's XHTML that says selected equals, quotation marks, selected. Thank goodness in HTML5 they got rid of that. And now systems is already selected. If you don't designate that, the first one on the list is there. Reen, do me a favor and test that. Don't select any, take the selected out. Don't select any and submit the form.
And I get nothing.
You get nothing. Change it back to a combo box. But when you change it back to a combo box by setting the size to 1 or just taking the size out altogether, notice the first option is already selected. If you don't change it, it's going to send that first option, right? So that's a subtle little thing to remember. And what if you wanted to come up empty to start with and force the user to pick something from there? Then what I normally do is add an option at the top with a value of 0 or something like that. and just give them some instructions. Or you can just put a non-breaking space in there. It'll come up blank. Okay, it's telling you here. And then when you get to the server side, or just before you submit the form in JavaScript, you can take a look at the combo box and say, is its value 0? If it is, then throw an error. You could do that on leave. Right, throw an error. See if the non-breaking space option works. It should. I'm going to leave it out. Cool. Don't even need the non-breaking space. But there is an option there with a value of 0. Okay, back to my list box. Now I really don't want this one, so I'm going to comment that out for the list box. Okay, and there's my list box. Nothing selected. And Reen reports that if we now submit the form, we get a value. You do get a value, right, for fave combo or for favorite class. It's empty.
No.
You don't even get a value.
No value.
Wow. Didn't know that. So if nothing is selected, you don't even get a value, and that's something we can check for on the server side, but that's a little more rare. Usually we want them to pick something here. Again, we can add validation in JavaScript to say if the value is still the empty string or is still 0 if we're looking at the value, then let the user know. One other feature that we can add.
Is there the required on this?
I don't know. Yep. Cool. Except, Tim and I were having this discussion. There's a lot of cool stuff in HTML5, but most of it on most browsers does not take effect until you submit. And that gets a little annoying because if you make 3 errors on the form, it tells you about one, and you fix that, and then you hit submit, and it tells you about the next one, and then you fix that, and hit submit, and tells you the next one. That gets a little annoying. Our JavaScript will be a little smarter than that. Okay, so that worked. Now the last option that I want to talk about here briefly is the opportunity to select multiple values in that list box. So if you want a multi-select list box, you can do that by just sticking the word multiple in here. And then you can either shift click to get everything in between, or you can control click. On your Mac, if you're using a Mac and a virtual device, you got to do a control command click. So it's a little annoying on the Mac. In Windows, if you're on the Mac itself, I think just a command click will do it. But there's a kicker here. Right? Green submitted this, right? With the way it is here, what do you get?
I selected 1 and 3, and I got 3.
And you got 3. Interesting. Because there's only, we said, we're going to send you back 1 value. This kicker doesn't usually catch you until next semester because you get multiple selections, and until you actually try to process that data, it's not going to affect you. But in my notes it says, if you're doing a multi-select, your name must include an empty set of square brackets designating an array of return values. And I believe my site, Reen's going to test it for me, but we're talking about the name here, okay? I believe my site checks to see how many elements there are in case it's multiple. It might not. If it doesn't, it's just a limitation the way my site processes that data. But that's how you send back all of the selections. It works.
Yep.
Good. With commas in between. I seem to remember writing some code to make that happen. Those are combo boxes and list boxes. Questions about those? Okay. Back to the notes. Group boxes I'm going to skip. It's just a field set. It's just, no, I'm not even going to do it. You wrap field set tags around whatever you want to group. Doesn't have to be radio buttons, because remember from last time, the radio buttons are not linked together because they're in the same field set. They're linked together because they all have the same name. Right, so the field set here has no effect on the way the form processes. If you can just wrap this around anything. If you wish, you can add a legend to it, and that'll just put some text above or below it, and I'm not a big fan of that either. Hidden inputs. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to be relying on Reen again. These are kind of like program constants that we could put in to our page. Could use them in JavaScript, but that's pretty rare. But we'll use the hidden values for in web data management is to share secret information between forms every time you move from one page into the site to a next one. All right, for instance, on my attendance page, if I save the changes and scroll down here and switch to the registrations page, it shows me the registrations for this course. How did it know that? There's a hidden value that sends the currently selected course. When I go back, and this is the hard part, it still remembers that I'm in that course. And this is hidden information that the user of this doesn't care about, though they do because it makes the site function well. I do because I want that to come up that way. But it's not information that gets displayed anywhere. It's just used by the site. Particularly once we get into multi-site pages that are doing web server-side processing as well, which is this is doing. It's sharing a database value. Because this page can be looking at any data. Okay. And then when I switch, when I switch, it keeps me in that course. And that's the same page, it's doing that. And so that's an example of where you might use some hidden data. It's not going to be used much in this class, except I'm going to require you to do one just so you're used to it. Most of the time I put my hidden data, my hidden input fields, these are inputs, right underneath my form style so I can find them. I don't hide them all over the place, though I don't always follow that rule. Occasionally there's one that's really attached to one of the objects on the form, then I'll move it. But most of the time I have an input type equals hidden. It generally has an ID, so the JavaScript can mess with it if it needs to. Actually, I'll just call it hidden or secret value. There we go. And I'll give it the same name. And then you give it a value. Done. Nothing too exciting here. The kicker is that it's hidden. And unfortunately, I can't show it to you, but if Reen runs this form, puts in some sample data, it will send that information, the hidden information, along with everything else on this form.
Yep.
So you can have as many hidden fields as you want and send secret data from this form to the server, and then the server can use that data however it sees fit. In my attendance sheet example, I sent the course ID as a hidden variable so that the next page will know that this is the course we're working on. And when I come back, it sends it back as a hidden variable. It's not this floating around global variable thing. It's a hidden variable that gets sent to the other form. The other form captures it and makes its own hidden variable say the same thing. So they're used primarily for communication, but there are a few other uses of them. Another example just occurred to me. We have a hidden field in the form next semester that designates whether or not JavaScript has validated this page. Some users don't like JavaScript. They turn it off. So the JavaScript you can't validate the page with JavaScript. So what we end up doing is in our JavaScript, we write a command that says change the JavaScript validation hidden variable to true. Well, if JavaScript is off, that never happens. The form hidden field still says false. When we get to the server side, the server says, oops, Java didn't validate this, I better do it. And let's just skip some validation on the server side if JavaScript's already done it. So that's another example. Hidden. I don't want the user to necessarily see that. Questions about hidden variables, hidden inputs. Neil, you're processing something really hard over there. You there?
Oh,
Okay.
quite the opposite.
Okay. I usually get at least a name. If JavaScript needs to mess with it, it has to have an ID as well. And that JavaScript validated variable has an ID, so the JavaScript can change it while the form is running, and then when we submit the form, that data gets sent. I've never messed with the tab index. If you want to play around with it, knock yourself out, but we can change the tab index. It's just like the sort order or the tab order that we had in Visual Studio. But generally, HTML does a nice job of just working you down the page, and if there's a little bit of a cross, you know, some going sideways and then some going down, HTML will just work its way down and across. And if you don't line them up very good, occasionally you'll do some funky things and maybe you want to mess with the tab index. HTML does tend to go across and then down. If you want to go down this column and then shift over to the next column, then maybe you want to set tab indexes, but you got to do it manually because it is a tag or an attribute of every single input field. Yeah.
So if you set the tab indexes for each page, if you enter another one in the middle, you have to edit the rest.
Yeah, we're using Notepad++, remember. Okay. If there's a way, I don't know if Expression Web will do tab indexes for you and set them and let you manipulate them in Expression Web or DreamMaker or Dreamweaver or whatever those other ones are called. I don't know. I don't use the tab index. My forms just tend to go down and it's easy. And you don't worry about it. Because so far everything works pretty well. We saw the autofocus, right? When I launched this page and reset it, and I'm going to get yelled at again, okay? The autofocus is at the top, and when I press tab, it just works its way down. And if I insert more as I go, okay, it just keeps putting more in there. Automatically. If you start numbering them, then you got to figure it out. And what happens when some are numbered and others aren't? I don't know. I don't think I would do that. Either number them or you don't. And I never have. Good to know that it exists, though. You can also define access keys. Let's try this one. If you wish, you can make the site a little easier to use by assigning access keys, the same kind of thing we did again in Visual Studio, so that the user can press the Alt key or Alt Shift in Firefox. I wonder what it's going to be in Firefox on a Mac. We'll see. Okay. All you do is designate that something has an access key. So I'm going to come down here to my favorite colors, and I'm going to say that the access key is equal to B for blue, and copy that for the other ones. Okay, so now if I press an Alt G, LastPass kicks in, that makes sense. Okay. If I press Alt Shift G, then it picks green. So the Mac didn't add anything to it for a change. Usually I have to add 3 more keys to that with the other hand and an elbow to make it work right. Okay. And I should be able to do an Alt-Shift-B and R, and that works. But how does the user know? In Visual Studio, when we assign an access key, remember we put the ampersand in front of a letter, Visual Studio and Windows got their heads together and say, let me underline that for you. Or do something to it to make it stand out. In Visual Studio, it's an underline. We could do the same kind of thing here. But then it gets a little trickier. I'm going to go into my styles, because I don't think I have this defined in my forms. It would be a decent thing to add to this someday. I'm going to define an access key. That's an attribute, so I can't just use it. An access key style. And now I can define anything I want. I can make it bold. I can make it underlined like Visual Studio would do. I can make it different colors. I can add background shading. I can do whatever I want. So I think I will do a font weight bold and a text decoration underline. And then over here, the magic happens because of me. Here's my B. I want to underline that and make it bold. So now I have to put a span in here. Yeesh. And give it a class equals access key and span. Got to be an easier way. Huh?
Not worth it.
Poor user, the alt keys don't work. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. Got to be an easier way. You could do the B tag, right? Or the U tag. Those are still legal in HTML5. They're not styles. And if I decide I want to change the way these look, now I'm a little bit out of luck. If I want to do colors, if I want to do background colors, etc. But that gives you an idea what it looks like. And so now I can just copy that and replace the R and the G and the R and the G. And it clutters up my HTML, but I should get what I need here. Save it, refresh the form, and there they are. So the bold's a little overkill to me. But then the other kicker comes in. How many Firefox users know that if they want to use access keys, they have to hold not only the Alt key, but the Shift key? I didn't know that. I tested this in Firefox. This stupid thing doesn't work. And somebody said it's working for me. And go, what are you using? Explorer. Shame on you, first of all. But works in Explorer. How come it doesn't work here? Or Chrome. I think Chrome works too without it. Okay, so that was Alt-Shift-G. And it works. So let's launch Chrome here real quick.
All works in Chrome.
Okay. It's just an Alt key. I'm guessing the same happens in Opera. I could transfer this page over onto my desktop and try it in Safari and see how it works there. It's just Firefox for some reason, and I think it's because Firefox is using the Alt keys for its own purposes, so now it's kind of messed up. This is another thing that bugs me a little bit. Notice the font. Font. This one's even weirder. All right. So one of the other things we could do in our CSS, since I still have it open, is just say in here for all of my inputs. I wonder if I could just do this. This is the Chrome version. Didn't seem to do anything to that. That was one of the things we struggled with a lot in the systems class, is getting our labels to match up with the text that appears in these. And let's see what we get over here. Notice even here it's weird and funky looking. Still didn't change it, so no, that plan didn't work. So how about if I switch this font family, or maybe it's Times New Roman that's causing me trouble. Hang on a second.
You already have a form style defined.
I think I can do more than one, but okay. Might be the problem. That really ought to be first. I do? Wait a minute. I have form styles with sub-elements, but I didn't have a form style. Where did I just put that? Here. But that's the form style for all of my inputs. And Tim was having a discussion with me via email about how do you lay out your CSS in a logical fashion for you? And then hope that the maintenance programmer thinks the same way you do. You know, Tim likes to put his based on the way they appear on the page. I have a lot of styles that get shared across pages, so they might not necessarily show up in the same place. I like to just put all my class styles together, and then all my tag styles together, and then all my ID styles together, and within them I alphabetize them. So if I'm looking for a style that I can see on a page as a class, go to the CSS and there's the classes, there it is alphabetically by name, I can find it.
Control F.
Control F would work too. All right, let's see if that makes any difference. I had a little suspicion that it's my form style that's causing, or my Times New Roman with spaces that's causing trouble, and not necessarily how I'm doing it. Saved it. Ooh, made some progress. Some of them are a little weird size-wise, right? What's up with this? It's just dots anyway, so it doesn't matter too much, but this one, that's definitely smaller. These are definitely smaller. Okay, let's try one other thing. So it was the form wasn't good enough. I had to get into each one of the inputs and do it. But this is inputs, text areas, selects, and buttons. What was I having trouble with? Oh, this one, that's a text. That's a text area. This is an input, so it should be changing. This one is a select, so it should be changing. And it is. It changed it to Times New Roman. But then what I can do is, let's try this. Font size, inherit. Meaning adopt the size of the parent. See how that works. Aha! Now the old man's happy. Everything looks the same to me. I'm good. I need to add those to my style sheet some year so I don't forget to do that year after year after year. Right. That makes them all the same, regardless of the type of inputs you use. The bad news is maybe here. Ooh, maybe I could do that with this one too. Even better. No, even better is inherit everything from the parent, I hope. Cool. Font size, font family from the parent. If I have a page full of boldface, heaven forbid, it would inherit it. Pardon me?
You would have thought that would have been default?
Times New Roman?
No, inherit.
Inherit? You'd think so for the form objects, wouldn't you? But they have their own mind somewhere. And this is Firefox, but let's see what that did in Chrome now. Shouldn't make a whole lot of difference here. It was doing the same thing. Yep. So that was a pretty easy fix once I thought about it a little bit. And so there's our access keys. Again, I'm not real thrilled with those, but we can use them. W3C suggests you underline or boldface. I got carried away, did both. Not done automatically. You need to provide some kind of visual clue to the access key. Form CSS we've taken a look at, but this is where I need to tweak it a little bit. We haven't seen error icons yet, but we will, and when we do, this is going to be the style for them. They are images, just little pictures, We're just going to move them over a little bit, make sure there's room between them and their inputs, and vertically align them to the top. Okay. It's been a while now, but it's been quite a while. There have been some new tags added to HTML. And as of last October, I checked these and I have some documentation, but I don't trust my documentation because I think this was Firefox 24 and we're at 32 and change right now in Firefox, and Chrome updates about every month or so. Internet Explorer's gone from 8 to 11. I could go through and test each one of these things, but instead I have sent you the list of the tags that I want you to investigate. Most of them, I just basically trimmed some of my notes off of here. If you have my notes up, please put them away. I want you to investigate these on your own. Okay. Here's the name of the input type. They're all input types except a few of them are attributes. New HTML5 attributes. And Tim said, is that for validation? Yes, all of these do validation, but they also have another purpose that I will share with you when you're done doing your research. I'll show you what happens on a mobile device. So another thing we need to start putting in the back of our heads when we develop these sites is how's it going to look on a phone? You know, my big, huge monster pictures that sit over here on the left and the right, that ain't going to work very well on a phone. But that's just kind of my style right now. I can pull those off and make it look halfway decent on the phone. How many of you have ever looked at my website on a phone? I have. It's not great, it's small, but most phones let you stretch and zoom because my fingers are too fat to click on things. But once you zoom, then you click and you can look around and you can see and you can run through PDF documents and you can do all that stuff. So it works pretty good. And as I said, one of the reasons I can't get to my website. Yeah, I can here. One of the reasons I tweaked my website a little bit was because on a phone or on a relatively small device, those used to wrap in a funky way. This is caused, and there might be a way to fix this, but this is caused because the menu wrapped at the same time. Right, so it kind of shifts this over. What I need to do is put a non-breaking thing in there so that this always moves down to the next line, and now my courses are listed vertically instead of side by each. So your job today is to pair up. So I would suggest, Brandon, you join Justin and Tim move back and join Harold. I'm going to let you pick a browser. No, you can't pick your own, you pick at random. And I would like you to test every one of those tags that I sent you, those input types. So you're going to need to write some CSS, or not CSS, excuse me. You're going to need to write some HTML to test those. I'm not interested in you testing them and making them beautiful. I want to see what does the number input type look like in the browser that you're assigned. What does the range input type look like? What does the date input type look like? And yes, they have changed. So one of you is going to need to log in with a virtual machine, download that email. What I would like you to do is take a screen snapshot. What does it look like? And paste it into those notes. In addition, play with it a little bit. You might want to, I'm going to save my form, I'm going to try, save my form, this one, up on OneDrive. And then you can go up and steal it and just take all the inputs out, leave the buttons and leave all the rest of the stuff, because you're going to need a submit button, because some of these only work when you submit. So you're going to need a submit button. And instead of you building a form, that's not the purpose here. I want you to test these inputs. So I'm going to save this and send it to you, but so that you can get started in the meantime, I'm going to hand out your browsers.